All right, guys. Pick up where we left off in the last video. I'll try to make this one hopefully a little bit shorter, so I can break these up so it's easier for you to see them all. I know sometimes you try to catch these on the break or something when you're at work, while your kids are doing something or whatnot. Anyway, we talked about this last time a little bit, but that's going to kind of start back here. But homeostasis is a term just means steady state. We're always trying to keep our body in what we call equilibrium. And what that means is that we're trying to keep, let's say, our temperature, our pH, osmotic balance, blood pressure, all of those things in an equilibrium. Now, that's not to say they don't change at times. They don't go up and go down. But it's that we can regulate them so that we can bring them back up or back down depending on which way they go. So let's say I get into an altercation with someone. My blood pressure goes up. Well, we don't want that to last forever. We want it up while we're in that fight or flight mode and our adrenaline's pumping. Once that's over with and we're out of a bad situation, we want to bring that back down to that steady state. So that's what we're trying to do with the human body, is maintain homeostasis. Anytime we get outside of that homeostatic range, we start opening ourselves up for disease. And that's really what kind of the definition of disease is. Anything that causes our body to go out of this homeostatic balance is a disease. So if we have an organ that's not working properly, or we have something that we're taking all the time, maybe drugs or alcohol or anything else like that, we are putting ourselves outside of that homeostatic balance, and it allows diseases to come in easier, whether they be pathogens like bacteria or virus, or our organs may not function properly. Right? So again, you need to watch what you put in your body, and you also need to watch the outside influences. The biggest killer on the planet for people is stress. Stress throws us out of a homeostatic imbalance. And when that does, it allows things to make us sick. So with homeostasis, all the organ systems are going to kind of work together to maintain this. So we have organs that perform certain functions that will allow the body to kind of keep in that steady state. So our kidneys, for instance, will regulate water balance in the body. We also have hormones that regulate blood pressure that are produced by the kidney. We also work with electrolyte balance with the kidney. So that's just one example, right? But there are many, and we'll get to those in a minute. Just like always, it takes forever for the first slide to shift over. Thought I'd hit it early enough this time to kind of keep consistent with what I was talking about, but it'll go in a second. It always takes a minute for some reason. Come on. Well, it seems to be really stuck this time. But what we're going to look at on the next couple of slides, once we pop up, is how do we regulate this homeostatic balance? What does our body do in order to keep us in balance so that we don't get outside of that, that place we want to be, which is right there in the middle, where we can go up a little bit or down a little bit, and then come back down to the level that we want. So a homeostatic control, the body must constantly be monitored and regulated. I like cars, and I like working on cars. I know this may not relate to a lot of you, but maybe you'll understand how your car works a little better when I talk about homeostatic control, because the computer in your car is trying to do the exact same thing that your brain is doing in your body. Your car has all these sensors that are all over the place that tell how much oxygen is being mixed with the fuel, and whether you're low on oil or whether you have tire pressure that's low, et cetera, et cetera. We've all experienced that when we drive. Our body's no different. We have little monitors all in our body, little receptors that tell our body whether we're out of balance with blood pressure, or out of balance with sodium levels, potassium levels, even the amount of pressure that we're dealing with, blood pressure wise, and also in the atmosphere. So we have a lot of different systems that work well together to help maintain that homeostatic balance. And your car does the same thing. We have all these little sensors that tell what's running right in the car, and it tells the computer, hey, this is what's going on. And if something bad's going on, the computer will adjust and make that car run better. And the same thing happens with us. Our brain will adjust certain places in our body to make us run better. So variables are factors that can change blood sugar, body temperature, blood volume, etc. And then there are variables in that control system that we have to deal with. And what we need is a system to do that. And that's what we're going to look at here. So we have what's called a receptor. Again, these are like the little sensors, like your mass flow air sensor and your O2 sensor in your car. It tells what's going on with the car as it's running. And we have that in the body. It monitors our environment and it responds to stimuli. If something changes, it sends a signal to the control center, which in the case of the car would be the computer. In the case of the human, it would be our brain. And then our brain determines what that set point should be, and then we adjust things to try to get that variable to go back where it should be. Right? So when we have something that varies from normal, we receive that. The brain then interprets that, and then we determine an appropriate response to it so that we can get us back down to normal. And the third part of the mechanism is the effector. This is what actually receives the output from the brain in this case and provides the means to respond. And we have two systems that work together. One is more prevalent than the other. More times than not, you're going to be looking at a negative feedback system. But there are a few positive feedback systems, and I'll mention both of them and how they work here in a minute. So negative feedback is most used in the body, and what that is, it works like your air conditioning. As something goes out of balance, something switches on to bring it back into balance again. So let's look at your air conditioner. When the temperature goes up too high, your AC cuts on, and it brings the temperature back down to where you want it at the set point. Let's say you like your temperature at 73 in your house. Well, if it goes up to 74, 75, 76, your air conditioner is going to come on and bring it back down to 73. Opposite's the same way. If it goes too low, then the heater will kick on and bring it back up, depending on what time of year it is and what you're dealing with. And we're the same way. If our temperature goes out of balance, we have a trigger that will set a cascade of events, like sweating and things like that, to bring us back to normal. Right? We also have hormones like insulin that can act to affect our blood sugar. If we have a spiking blood sugar, we will produce more insulin to bring it down. If we have low blood sugar, we will release glucagon to bring it back up. So again, it works almost the same way as your air conditioning system. That is the best analogy I can give you because everybody's familiar with that and kind of know how that works. Again, if it goes up too high, it'll bring it back down. If it goes down too low, it'll bring it back up. Right? So again, some negative feedback in the body. Blood glucose, again, the insulin will bring that back under control. Someone with diabetes has a homeostatic imbalance. They're not able to regulate blood sugar properly because they either don't produce insulin, type 1, or the insulin can't bind with the cell, which is type 2, and bring sugar into the cell. Either way, the cell's not getting sugar like it needs, and that can be a problem. So again, your body normally, if it has insulin and glucagon, the pancreas is functioning properly. If your blood sugar spikes, well, you will take some of that blood sugar out by, using insulin to bring it back down. But if our blood sugar is really low, our glucagon will be released and break glycogen down into sugar, and that'll bring our blood sugar back up again. We'll study that a lot more in AMP2 when we get to the endocrine system. But that's just a general example. So this is pretty easy. Let me just go through this really quickly. Just kind of think of the seesaw or the teeter-totter, whatever you called it back when you were a kid. You have a balance. If you have two kids on either side, it's balanced out. But let's say another kid jumps on with you and might throw one side off from the other. So something has to happen to bring that back in balance again. So the first thing that's going to happen is some kind of stimulus is going to produce a change in the variable. So something's going to make things change, and that's going to throw us out of balance. The receptor is going to pick up on that, and then the control center is going to take that information, and it's going to put an output to the effector. And the effector is going to make the change that brings it back to normal again. So notice we went out of balance here, but then as we elicited the effector, it brought this back up to where it should have been. All right, so we always want to keep this level playing field. We always want to keep things even. Right? And then the response is going to occur until we bring that back up to the homeostatic level, and then it's going to stop. And that's why we call it a negative feedback system, because once we reach our goal, we shut it off. And that's going to be what we call a negative response. It's going to be like, hey, I'm where I need to be. Shut up, stop. I don't want you here anymore. Okay? So that's kind of how the body works. And again, these are the most common feedback systems in the body is a negative feedback. So this works either way if you get cold or hot. Anything that throws us out of balance, if we get too hot, we start to sweat. And that brings us back to normal and we cool off. If we get too cold, then we start to shiver, and the muscles shivering makes more heat, and then we get back in balance that way. Now, positive feedback, again, is a lot more rare in the human body. The response enhances instead of bringing it back down. So instead of going back to normal, we actually increase the range out of normal. And again, that doesn't work too well in most cases, so we don't use it that much. But there are times when this happens, and it happens in some extreme cases when we're doing things our body doesn't normally do. So again, this is going to be something that may not require a continuous adjustment. It may be a one-time deal. Think of having a child. You don't have a child every single day. That's a very traumatic experience on the body. The female body goes through a lot of changes during pregnancy and during delivery, and that's not something that's normal, that happens on an everyday basis. It happens whenever the woman gets pregnant. So this is where we have hormones and things that will enhance instead of bring back to normal. So if you've had a child, a lot of you have, you may have had, to be induced or whatever, and they inject you with oxytocin, and oxytocin is one of those hormones that not only makes you deliver, but also makes you bond with the child and produce milk. It helps with that. There's a lot of others too, but this is a time when things are going on where the body's not normally doing this on a daily basis. This is a one-time event or maybe a two-time event in a lifetime. Well, some people have more than two, but that's kind of average. But it doesn't happen every day is what I'm getting at. It's an infrequent event. And the other is when you injure yourself. You don't go cutting yourself every day and bleeding out. That's something that hopefully is a rare event that doesn't happen. And so those are two good examples. Labor contraction will start slow with the contractions, and then they'll become more and more severe and often until the baby's delivered. Same thing with blood. When you are bleeding out, you will form that platelet plug, and then your blood will clot behind it. And that whole process is bringing in all of these platelets and things to help seal off that wound so that you don't bleed to death. And that's a positive feedback where it will actually come in and amplify the effect as it's occurring. So the platelets come in, they adhere to the wound, they send out chemical messengers and bring more platelets in. So you see that cascade of events where it's actually increasing instead of decreasing. So again, you won't hear about positive feedback too much. There are a couple of others, but that's pretty much two good examples for that. So here's blood clotting. Again, I'll take you through this. So let's say we tear a blood vessel. Platelets come in, they adhere at the site, they release chemical messengers. That makes more platelets come in. They follow those chemical messengers and come to that site. And that goes on and on and on until the blood finally stops spilling out of the vessel. And clotting occurs, and then you go into the healing process. And we'll go over this in much more detail when we get into AMP2. We talk about the blood and the cardiovascular system. Right? So again, when that plug's fully formed, that's when it shuts down. All right, and that's when the cycle ends. Right? So again, this is another good example of positive feedback. Now, homeostatic imbalance, again, increases the risk of disease. Anytime we get out of balance in the body, that's when bad things happen to us. The control systems become less efficient, and a lot of times this will become a chronic problem where things just get worse and worse and worse over time. And we want to stay away from homeostatic imbalances. Anything we put in our body that's toxic throws us out of balance. Anything that causes us to go through trauma, whether it be stress or anything else, that throws us out of balance. Again, stress is the number one killer in America. It causes heart disease. It causes all kinds of different disorders. Um, and living a stress-free life makes you more likely to live longer. There's been study after study on that to show that that's what occurs. So when you get really stressed and tense, it puts a lot of strain on your cardiovascular system. It puts strain on your body itself. Um, I'll just give you a great example, and if you want to Google this, do it. Look at a president the day he takes office, and then look at a president the day he leaves office. And look at the changes in their physical appearance. And even a one-term president that serves for 4 years instead of 8, even then it's a profound change. But look at an 8-term or 8-year president that serves 2 terms, and look at them when they get inaugurated in the day. And it's only 8 years later. And look at how much they age. It's amazing, and it's all due to stress. I don't know what this is. Anyway, I'm done with that one. I'm going to cut this video off, and I'll start a new one with